Well, let's talk about all of this now with Brendan O'Neill. He's editor of Spiked Online. And one person I think, Brendan, you and I agree on an awful lot of things, but on this issue, we have disagreed. Why do you think that Dominic Cummings has done nothing wrong?
I think he was acting in the best interests of his family. I think he may well have broken the lockdown rules, but I am a lockdown skeptic, so I can't get particularly exercised about that. But if he did, I think he did so in as he says, a reasonable way. He drove to a house that is not his normal house in order to self-isolate in what he thought would be a safer environment for him, his wife, and his child. I just can't get het up about that. And I actually think in some sections of the media, not the whole media, in some sections of the media, this has become a witch hunt. His crimes, in quote marks, have been blown out of proportion, and I think it's become completely political.
Look, I think absolutely it's political. I absolutely agree with you on the witch hunt aspect and some of the behaviour of people, including the media, outside Dominic Cummings' family home where his wife and child live, I think have been absolutely reprehensible. I mean, really out of order. But you say he acted in the best interest of his family. He seems to believe that there was, these exceptional circumstances. But I mean, partly we're told because his son, it's been put out in the media, his son is autistic. He's 4 years old, but he was worried about his wife was ill. He was worried he was going to be coming ill. I don't understand. I've got a kid, okay, not a 4-year-old, but I've got lots of friends who've got very young children. I don't understand why one of you being ill, the other one not being ill, and having one child, that in any way that makes you an exceptional circumstance. I would have said that makes you incredibly unexceptional. On what basis did you think that he was best interest of his family? Millions of people have not done what's in the best interest of their family. They've not. The grandparents haven't been visited. People haven't been able to sort of, I mean, I've got an only child. I mean, it's not in the best interest of my child to not be able to play with her friends. People have to do stuff that's not in the best interest of their family at a time of a lockdown. Now, whether or not you agree or don't agree with the rules, he did agree with the rules. He helped bring in the rules. The onus was on him to obey those rules.
I think there are 2 points in relation to that. The first is that I think lots of people actually have done things that you're not, strictly speaking, allowed to do. Around 29% of Brits admit to having broken the lockdown rules to do things that they thought were important. I'm sure that number is actually higher than that.
I agree with
quite a few people have done things. People have gone to funerals. We know that a Labour MP attended a crowded funeral. I thought the reaction against that was repulsive, and I cannot even countenance the fact that people are not allowed to go to funerals at the moment. I think that's really awful. So people have been doing things like that when they've thought that the human need overrides the rules. And I think Dominic Cummings did something similar. But alongside that, the thing I found so reprehensible about the press conference yesterday is that I actually thought Cummings came across as nice, nervous, open. He's been through hell. His child was rushed to hospital. His wife and himself were ill. His uncle died from COVID-19.
Sorry, he's not been through hell. No, Brendan, I'm sorry. He got poorly. His wife got poorly. Well, same for me and my family. His children, virtually everyone who's had a child has at some point had a rush to hospital. I'm sorry, he's not been through anything that any other family in this country hasn't been through. I do not accept that.
I was just going to add a further few facts on top of that. So his child was rushed to hospital. He and his wife were ill. His uncle died from COVID, and he didn't go to the funeral. So all those people saying, we missed funerals and you've been gallivanting around the country were not on top of the facts. He missed the funeral too of a loved one. And on top of that, when he gets back to London and some of this story comes out, there is this absolutely psychotic response from the media, from activists. People have turned up outside his house playing images on a huge truck of sick people, of people talking about death with no regard whatsoever for the young child inside the house. Yeah. There's been graffiti on his street. People have been shouting at him. So if you add all those things together, so not just the COVID experience, everyone's had bad COVID experiences, or almost everyone. Add all that stuff together, the witch hunt, the unpleasant experiences he's had, the death in the family, the missing of a funeral. That was an unpleasant experience. And then what happens at the press conference? The media hears all this and just carries on barking the same questions again and again. And I think a lot of people will have watched that press conference and thought, Cummings actually looked okay. The media looked like a pack of wolves.
Now, I absolutely agree with you, and some of those questions were very, very personal. They weren't a neutral political editor answering those questions, asking those questions, and I think, that's an issue. But you and I also know that Dominic Cummings' demeanour, his manner, what he was saying, other than the fact that I didn't break lockdown rules and I'm not regretting anything, that was not normal Dominic Cummings. You don't have to know him well to know that is not how he normally behaves. He was putting on a performance that was necessary to keep his job. That's what he's doing. Now, I don't blame him for doing that. Fair enough. However, do you not think this could all have been resolved if he'd come out early, once the first reports came out, and given a full account early on? If Downing Street hadn't taken that high and mighty view, but also it was known that he wasn't at home. Downing Street was repeatedly asked while he was off sick and while the Prime Minister was sick, where is Dominic Cummings? We were told repeatedly he was at home. Now, is it relevant where his advisor is? Yeah, when the Prime Minister is in ICU and the man who's effectively putting the strings behind government is not actually anywhere, even in London, and is ill himself, we, I think, had a right to know. You cease to have a 100% private life when you take on these public positions. And let's also bear in mind the fact that this is a man who was part of those lockdown rules. He attended the Sage Committee hearings. He was someone who supported those rules. There's a big difference between another person breaking the rules, or indeed an MP breaking the rules, as opposed to someone who's helping to make the rules. Hence why Catherine Calderwood, the Chief Medical Officer of Scotland, had to resign after she'd gone off to a holiday home, having specifically told people and was in adverts telling people you can't do that. And Professor Neil Ferguson, again, having his lover over when he was one of the Sage advisors. Same position for Dominic Cummings. Why should they have gone and him not?
I think you're absolutely right that more openness at the start of this scandal from government and a clear statement, if they had published all the things that Dominic Cummings said yesterday, I think it would have helped to nip some of this in the bud. So that's absolutely true. I think in relation to him not saying where he was, his justification is that he didn't want people turning up in Durham. Now, everyone laughed at that, but yesterday Sky News doorstepped his elderly parents in Durham, one of whom has just lost a sibling to COVID-19. That's really unpleasant behaviour. So I actually think there is some justification to what he said in relation to that. But in the round, what I think is the real problem here, Dominic Cummings broke the rules. Some people will think that's bad. Some people like me will think it's not that bad. But I think the media behaviour has been dreadful, and it has become a witch hunt, and lots of the media stories have fallen apart, and no one is talking about that. The front page of the Sunday Mirror, the front page of the Observer said he made 2 trips, which was a transformative claim in this scandal, because it really suggested he didn't care about anything. That's now pretty much clear that that's not true. Smelling bluebells, physical contact with family, doing things you shouldn't be doing, lots of these claims have fallen down. And all I would say to the media right now is that we should get our own house in order before we worry about what's going on in Dominic Cummings' house.
Okay, absolutely. But again, I think an awful lot of those claims were because the Downing Street wouldn't reply. No one would actually get. Dominic Cummings was coming on as a source to people and wasn't giving full responses. I think a lot of it he brought on himself. Just finally, look, this idea that, and Sir Keir Starmer said this, that this is the idea of one rule for the rest of us and one rule for the elite. One of the reasons why I am a Brexiteer, one of the reasons actually why I'm a Republican with a small r, is again, I just believe that we are all equal. We should all have equal say. And one of the reasons I voted for Brexit was I didn't want this elite, this Ramona elite who thought they knew better than us, getting to decide how our government is run. And sort of, the silly people will vote for silly things because they're too stupid and they don't know what they're doing, and we'll decide because we know better than them. Isn't the problem with this? This is the man who fought against this idea that we know better than the people, actually deciding that he did know better than the people because he was allowed to break the rules. Isn't that part of the problem? The man who fought against the elite showed that basically he is part of the elite.
There is an issue there, and I do think double standards have to always be called out. I hope that this will now give rise to a situation where all the people who've been fined for breaking the lockdown rules or charged will have all of that stuff cast out, because I do think it's now widely accepted, I hope, that people can exercise judgment within the guidelines. And I think lots of people who've been fined probably should not have been. So I hope it gives rise to that kind of development. On Keir Starmer, the great irony, of course, is that he accuses the government of treating ordinary people with contempt. This is the man who was the architect of the disastrous Labour Brexit policy, which was to overthrow Brexit. But the thing is, in relation to the Ramona political worldview, which you and I have been very critical of, I think a lot of the pushback against Cummings is being driven by that. So I think Boris was right to stand by Cummings because he recognised that this was an attempt to wound his government, wound Brexit, and get the Remoaners back on top. And I don't think we should let that happen.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Brendan O'Neill, editor of Spiked Online. And a lot of people will be agreeing with every single word you said there.